Okay, good evening, welcome, thank you for coming. So what I thought I'd do in the halacha shir that we have at this slot is to focus, to have a sort of a mini-series on chasnas, on weddings, the halachas related to getting married, because I don't know about you, but I think just now with post Shavuos, there seem to be a lot of chasnas coming up in the next few weeks, Baruch Hashem, Mitzvah Ken Yirbu. And I just thought it'd be an interesting area to explore. I don't think we've done it in the past. So there are three shiurim, three topics, tonight, next week, and the week after. Next week, the topic we'll discuss is called the case of the chassan who jumped the gun. We'll explain that case study next week. The week after that is the halachas of a shomer, the shomer of a chassan and kala. That's quite an unknown area. You know, the chaperone, the person who's going to look after the chassan and the kala. Is it the day of the wedding, the shev brachas, how does it work? And tonight we're going to be discussing quite a fundamental question, and that is it a mitzvah to get married? Now, this may sound a shocking question. Of course it's a mitzvah to get married, isn't this what we've grown up to believe? But it's not so straightforward. Well, we'll discuss, very good. So the starting point is that a lot of the Mamori Chazal we come across suggest that of course it is a mitzvah to get married. I haven't actually included it on the sheet. If you're listening at home, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. But the first source is not actually even on the sheet. We're learning Kiddushin at the moment in school, and we switched after Pesach to the second parak. The second parak begins Ho'ish Mekadesh Boi Ubeshlucha, which means a man can get married either by himself, he can do it himself, or he can make a shliach to do it for whatever reason. He can make an agent, a shliach, to do it on his behalf. So the Gemara says, well, if a shliach can do it, then obviously the guy can do it. So the Gemara explains that mitzvah boy yoisme b'shluchai. There is a concept of a mitzvah to be done by yourself. By yourself is better than appointing somebody else to do it for you, and the Gemara gives examples of that. But clearly the Gemara uses an expression of mitzvah when it comes to kiddushin, to getting married. So that suggests it is. And indeed, the Rambam is of the opinion that getting married is one of the 613 mitzvahs, which should not come as a big surprise. Let's take a look at the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph. In other words, the very first halacha of the Rambam when it comes to matters of kiddushin, of getting married. The Rambam tells us the background. Koidem matan Torah, before the Torah was given, haya adam pogea isha b'shuk. How did it work? How did it work? I mean, there was no shidduchim, there was no marriage. So maybe, a man would meet a woman in the marketplace or wherever. If they want to get married, he just, they decide to get married. He takes her home. They live together. That's it. They're husband and wife. But once the Torah was given, then Klal Yisrael were commanded, if a man and a woman want to get married, then yikne oisa tchila b'fnei edim. There's got to be a proper kinyan. So there's got to be a proper kinyan that takes place. The first Mishnah in Kiddushin describes the various options. What we do today is, of course, with kesef, which is, or kesef, shava kesef, which is a ring, and the man, the chassan, gives the kala a ring under the chuppah. He says the immortal words of Harat Mekudesh, Esli, etc. And that is the kinyan that the Rambam is referring to. Now, in the next halacha, the Rambam says, "V'likuchin elu," this ceremony, this kinyan, this acquisition, we call it. It's not a purchase, right? But it's a kinyan. Mitzvahs asay shel Torah heim. It's a mitzvahs asay from the Torah. Okay, v'likuchin elu heini kroin kiddushin erisin b'chol makom. Just by way of background, there are two stages to the ceremony. Nowadays, we do them together. The kiddushin, also known as erusin, is the first stage. The second stage is the nisuin, and that happens under the chuppah nowadays together. But back in the day, in the olden times, there used to be two very separate stages, a bit similar to engagements and weddings now, that you get engaged, and then you wait a number of months to prepare for the chasna and for married life, and then you have the nisuin. But actually, under the chuppah, we do both the erusin, also known as kiddushin, and the nisuin together. The kiddushin is when the man makes the kinyan, i.e. he gives the wife the ring, there are edim, brachas are made, and then there is a bit of a gap, sometimes with the reading of the ksubah, sometimes a speech, sometimes a josh or whatever, and then you have the nisuin, which is the sheva brachas, and there are various ways of doing the nisuin, either taking it into the yichud room or bringing it into the chuppah. The Sheva brachas, different approaches in the Rishonim, but there are two different stages to the ceremony. But either way, the Rambam is of the opinion that Kiddushin is min ha-Torah, and he repeats this idea in Sefer HaMitzvahs. There are what's called Moinei HaMitzvahs. There are those a whole genre of literature of people who work out what the 613 mitzvahs are. We know the Gemara in Makkah says Taryag mitzvahs, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Torah is Gematria 611, the first two from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, 613 in total, all from the Torah, of course, and the Rambam, the Chinuch, the Smag, and others work out what actually the 613. So it's a whole literature, whole world of literature of what they are. So the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs, in Mitzvahs Asay Reish Yud Gimel, in Mitzvah number 213, he repeats this and says, HaMitzvah Reish Yud Gimel, Mitzvah number 213 is Shetzivonu B'Kiddushin, the mitzvah to get married, Shemitzvahs Kiddushin D'Oraisa. So the Rambam is categoric. He says that it's one of the 613 mitzvahs. Now, interestingly, what's the mitzvah before it? Mitzvah Sasei Reishut Beis is HaMitzvah Reishut Beis, which is Tzivonu Lifreis V'Lirbois V'Lechavim L'Kaim Hamin, to sort of make sure we sort of populate the world. For who She'omer Yisale, that's what the Torah says, Pru Uruvu. So the Rambam clearly counts these two as two separate mitzvahs. One is 212 and one 213. Why is it first?
Why is it the mitzvah?
Because the Rambam, the Chinuch goes through according to the the order of the Torah. So I'll start off with Bereshis, and in fact, we'll get to the Chinuch on the next page. Mitzvah number 1 is Puruvu, as you suggest, because that is in Parshas Bereshis. Right? That's on the next page. But the Rambam and others don't list it according to Torah portions. Rather that, the Rambam says first there are 6 constant mitzvahs, and then he goes through and he works through whatever they are, but not necessarily in the order that they appear in the Torah.
And what's the pasuk that's the mitzvah Kiddushin?
So the Rambam, I'm not sure, but it suggests from the Rambam in Hilchas Ishin, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, that it's Ki Yikach Isha Sho Ba'aleha. And Yikicha is referring to Kiddushin. Okay, so now that's all pretty clear. The Rambam is clearly of the opinion that it's one of the 613 mitzvahs. However, there are many Rishonim who say that there actually is no mitzvah to get married. And the mitzvah really is Puruvu. But Kiddushin is just a means to an end. It's a hechsher mitzvah, a way to get there. That's all. And there could be a situation where a person has already got children and he therefore doesn't need to be Mekayim mitzvah Puruvu. And therefore there's no mitzvah or obligation to get married. And that is the view of some Rishonim. And
how do they refute the pasuk and Torah then?
Oh, so we'll see. Because that's just talking about how you get married. Yeah, and then it talks about the whole concept of divorce as well. So there's lots of reasons of why the Torah says what it does, but it doesn't necessarily follow that it is a mitzvah, one of the 613 mitzvahs. Now, to explain the approach of those Rishonim, we're going to do the Rosh and the Ritva. We need to understand the brachas of the Eirusin, what actually happens under a chuppah. Now, I know when I discuss it with the boys in my shir, often they haven't got a clue what goes on under the chuppah, right? They're standing at the back somewhere, and they're not focusing on actually the procedure that goes on under the chuppah, and perhaps many people are not familiar with it. But what actually happens under a chuppah? Well, if we forget the tish and the bedecking and everything, let's just move straight to the chuppah. The chassan is standing under the chuppah, and then the kala walks down and will join him. And then you have the first stage of the ceremony, the Eirusin. Now, the bracha for the Eirusin is put in box number 2. It's a very unusual bracha. Let's take a look. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvosov, v'tzivonu al ha'arayos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has commanded us not to have forbidden relationships, those who we cannot marry. V'asalanu es ha'arusos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has forbidden us to marry or to live within our rusa. That means a lady who a man has been mekadesh, has given her the kesef kiddushin, but they haven't yet had nisuin. V'hitir lanu es hanasuas lanu, but he's only permitted a nasua, which means after stage 2, al yidei chuppah v'kiddushin, which is by way of chuppah v'kiddushin. Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh ema Yisrael al yidei chuppah v'kiddushin. Now, this is very different to regular mitzvahs. Here's just 2 examples of the other birchas ha-mitzvahs. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvosov v'tzivanu likboya mezuzah. Right, straightforward. Next one, Asher Kishon Mitzvah Sivonu Ala Tvila, etc. Take a look at the Rosh. The Rosh asks a series of questions, 4 questions, on the bracha of Erusin. He says it's a very strange bracha. First question: Yesh makshin al nusach bracha zu, lama ein mevarchin asher kitshanu b'mitzvah yisavitzivonu lekadesh es ha'isha. Just a straightforward bracha. Why is it so verbose? Second question: V'oid heichel matzinu bracha kazais. Where do we find such a bracha? Shemevarchin al masha asulon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we make a bracha on that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu forbids us. We don't find, when it comes to the bracha of shchita, that we say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Chaylam ala shchita, and we don't say, but he forbids us to eat Eivim Menachai first, and that's what we're doing over here. Third, V'oid ma inyan lahazke orayis bekan. Why are you mentioning forbidden relationships? In the bracha we're saying, and Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that a man is forbidden to marry his aunt. Why is that relevant here? And fourth, v'oid ma lonu lahazke chuppah bekan. Why are we even mentioning the chuppah? Kimashim mevarchin birchas eresin bebeis eresin below chuppah. Back in the day, like I said, the chuppah is stage 2 for the nisuin. The kiddushin or eresin, it doesn't have to be under a chuppah. It can be in the base erusin, in just in a hall, in a house, or wherever. So why are we mentioning that? Venerally, says the Rosh, ki bracha zu eina bracha la'asiyas ha-mitzvah. This is not a bracha for a performance of a mitzvah. It's not a birchas ha-mitzvah. Ki priya v'rivya hainu kiyim ha-mitzvah. Because what is the mitzvah? Ultimately, the mitzvah is puravu, to have children. V'im lokach pilegesh. If a man marries a pilegesh, which is basically a wife without a ksuba, v'kiyim priya v'rivya, and he's mekayim, he has children with her, he's not now obligated to get married because he's already been mekayim the mitzvah of puravu. So too, if he enters a relationship where he's not going to have children, for example, an older couple get married, or she's not able to have children, or he can't have children, you still make the bracha, and if it was a mitzvah, a birchas ha-mitzvah, you should make the bracha. So you see clearly that it's you still make this bracha. And the mitzvah is if the whole mitzvah is puravu, then you would have to make a special bracha of that on that mitzvah. And therefore, we were not masakin a bracha lekadesh es ha'isha because, says the Rosh, there is no mitzvah lekadesh es ha'isha. There is no mitzvah of kiddushin. So what is the nature of this bracha? Says the Rosh, bracha zu niskan elosei shevach lakadosh Baruch Hu. This bracha is is there to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Asher kitshanu b'mitzvosov v'hivdilanu min ha'amim. He has separated us from other nations. Lekadesh isha hamuteres lanu, that we marry a woman who is permitted for us to marry. V'lo achas min ha'rayis, and not someone who we're forbidden to marry. V'hizkir ba'issa arusos v'hetzin nesuas b'chuppah v'kiddushin. And the reason why we mention Erusin and Nisuin and Chuppah and Kiddushin, shelo yite adam loma, that a person shouldn't make a mistake to say, sha'abrocha shel Kiddushin nisken lahatzir le. People might mistakenly say, you've had the Erusin, also known as Kiddushin, you've made the bracha, and now they're permitted to live together. Lokach izkiru Chuppah, therefore we mention the Chuppah, lomar, to teach, dafka b'birchas Chuppah hi hamateres hakala. It's only after stage 2, the Nisuin, after the Chuppah, where they're permitted to live together. Good. Therefore, that's why the order is chuppah and then kiddushin, because the chuppah is stage 2 and kiddushin is stage 1. Lomar, because we understand the bracha to mean as follows: He permitted us to marry or to live with the nesua through chuppah, which takes place after the kiddushin. That's how the Rosh understands the bracha. So the Rosh is of the opinion that there is one mitzvah, and the mitzvah is puravu. There is no mitzvah to get married. And the Ritva, if you take a look, this is a Ritva also. This is a Ritva in Ksubas, as is the Rosh. The Ritva in Ksubas on Daf Zayin on the base, where you have all the Sheva Brachas Gemaras. There, the Ritva says, he asks another question. If you look at the top of the next page, Va'oid in Birchas HaMitzvah, if it is a birchas ha-mitzvah, i.e. the mitzvah of Kiddushin, heich ein ha'oros mevarech esah. What a great question, says the Ritva. And he asks other questions, this is just one of the several questions he asks. But he says, if it is indeed a mitzvah, then why isn't the chosen making the mitzvah, making the bracha? It's his mitzvah, so let him make the bracha. I don't find that somebody else makes the bracha to shake the lulav, and I shake the lulav. So why is it that the rabbi makes the bracha if it's somebody else's mitzvah? Elo, says the Ritva, al karchach bracha zu ein eleke ein kiddush amashikichona kadosh baruch hu yosim mishar ha'umus be'ein privirvia. Same line as the Rosh. This is a bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has sanctified us more than other nations, that we have a special mitzvah called Pruravu. Mepnei shebracha hi ke'ein kedusha kedichsivna le'el lefichach nagu kol Yisrael lo'im ala kais. That's why you take a kais. It's like a kiddush almost. You're making kiddush for this mitzvah, which is ultimately Pruravu. That is the mitzvah. Now, so you've seen that there are two approaches in the Rishonim. The Rambam is clear that it's two separate mitzvahs, and the Ritva, the Rosh, and others Rishonim say that it's one mitzvah of Pruravu. Interestingly, there are other Monei HaMitzvahs, the Smag, for example, and the Sefer Chinuch, both go like the Rambam and say that it's two separate mitzvahs. So, for example, in the Smag, in Mitzvah in Asay Siman Memches, he says, Mitzvah Asay Lekadesh Isha, that's one separate mitzvah, and then in Memtes, Ba'arba Mekomis Hesira Torah Privirivya, two separate mitzvahs. And so to the Chinuch. And the Chinuch, of course, always gives reasons for the mitzvahs. So the Chinuch says, if you look in Parshas Kiseitze, in Mitzvahs Tov Kuf Nun Beis, that's 552, Mitzvahs Kiddushin Be'isha, there's a mitzvah to get married, Shenitztavinu, Liknois o Isha Ba'achas Mishleisha Drachim, Kodim HaNisuin, it's called a kinyan, and that's one of the three ways you're kohen of the Isha. Misharsha mitzvah, what is the background to the mitzvah of Kiddushin? Says the Chinuch, Shetzivonu HaTorah Lasos Maisa Be'isha Yore Inyan Zivugim Terem Yishkiv Imo. Before they just live together, there should be some sort of formality. They don't just sort of just live together like a zayna. But they realize that this is a formal ceremony, there's a proper bond over here, there's a kinyan, they're connected, and it's not sort of easy come, easy go. And on the contrary, this will enhance shalom bayis, it will enhance the longevity of the marriage, etc. So that's the chinuch. And then in mitzvah aleph, this is what I referred to earlier, the very first mitzvah in Parshas Bereshis says the chinuch Bereshis yesh ba mitzvah asay achas. Parshas Bereshis only has one mitzvah. What is that? V'hi mitzvahs privirivya. It's the mitzvah of pruruvu. Shnema ve'varech esom lekim ha'imah lekim pruruvu. Mishar she mitzvazu. What is the idea? What is the background? Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu make this mitzvah? Kedei sheyihyeh ha'olam miyushav. That the world should be inhabited. Hashem Baruch Hu chafetz b'yeshivai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the world to be populated. K'dichsiv lo'soihu v'ra lo'sheves yitzhar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't create the world that it should be empty. V'hi mitzvah gedola shebesibosa miskayemes kol hamitzvahs bara'olam ki livnei adam nitnu v'leilem machei hasharis. And that's a fundamental mitzvah because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the world to be populated so that we could fulfill mitzvahs and we could live in this world and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it wasn't given to angels, etc. So what emerges from this? Is there a mitzvah to get married? Well, it's machlokus. Ultimately, the Rishonim debated, the Rambam, the Chinuch, the Smag, all are of the opinion there is a separate mitzvah to get married, but the Rosh, the Ritva, and other Rishonim, they are of the view that there is no inherent mitzvah to get married, it's just a hechsha mitzvah, it's a preparation for the mitzvah, and the mitzvah is Puravu. Now, even they would understand that, of course, this is the aspiration of Jewish life. And there are thousands of Mamori Chazal. I just picked one. The Gemara in Yevamos Samach Beis on the base. The Gemara says, that ultimately this is the ideal way to live: a husband and wife in a Jewish home, in a family setting, etc. And a person who, living outside of that, doesn't get the fullness of simcha and bracha and tova. And that's, of course, the aspiration for every person, and that's what we daven for that everyone can enjoy that bracha in their life. But the point is, technically, according to some, there is no mitzvah per se to get married. The mitzvah is the mitzvah of pru'urvu.
So who decided that you have to get married?
So either way, whether you go like the Rambam, there's a mitzvah per se to get married, and even according to the other opinions, a person that the person would want to be Mekayim the mitzvah puravu. And moreover, of course, we know that is the ideal setup of a Jewish home. The centrality of a Jewish home and marriage is undisputed. Just technically, the question is it inherently a mitzvah to get married or not?
What about men and women? Is it a mitzvah for a man?
Good, yeah. So that's a good point. So it would appear that, according to the Rambam Lechora, that the mitzvah of kiddushin is on both, because and I haven't seen the chinuch and the smag who both they set out and they tell you when they tell you who it applies to, when it applies, and all the details. So when it comes to puruvu, they'll say this is a mitzvah for men, not for women, which is a clear Gemara. That women, because they're endangered, it's a dangerous situation, they can't be mitzvah on it. So a woman is not mitzvah on puruvu. But when it comes to the mitzvah of kiddushin, they don't seem to make a distinction, and therefore, a woman would be also, a mitzvah, fulfilling a mitzvah to get married. But according to the Rosh and the Ritva, where there is no separate mitzvah to get married, the mitzvah is only puruvu, they're not. But again, it doesn't take away from the ideal that everyone, of course, has, is that everyone should be zocher to the bracha of marriage. Yeah, another question. Okay, but what was the question you asked though?
Sorry, just to repeat, what was the chassan should make the bracha?
So how do we answer that question?
Yeah.
So the Ritva asked, if it is a bracha, a birchas ha-mitzvahs, then surely the chassan should be the one to make the bracha. So the answer to all the questions of the Rosh and of the Ritva is that kiddushin is not a mitzvah, and therefore the bracha for kiddushin is not a birchas ha-mitzvah. It's just a bracha of praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore it's not incumbent on the chassan necessarily to make it. The Rav, the person who's being Misad Kiddushin, can make the bracha because of the whole setting. This is a praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's the one sort of making Kiddush for everyone, as it were.
Generally, the chassan could make.
Yeah, I don't see. I've never seen it, but technically, it's according to the Rosh and the Ritva, this is a birchas hashevach of praise to Hashem, and therefore anybody could make it. Any more questions?
We run all our chuppahs according to the fact that it's actually not a mitzvah to do the kiddushin.
Why'd you say that?
Because we're running according to the Rosh and the Ritva, and we're not making the brachas under the chuppah.
No, everyone makes the bracha, this bracha of birchas erusin.
But the chassan doesn't do it, therefore it's not his mitzvah.
I see. So the Rambam would have to explain why is it, and others, the Shulchan Aruch as well, why is it that somebody else makes the bracha? Okay, but you can see somebody else in the bracha. Maybe he's too nervous. He struggles it off with the words of Haram Kodeshesli, right? And maybe that's already too much for him to make the bracha of this area, which is quite a tongue twister. Is probably too much. Okay, either way, they'll have to answer that question. They'll have to answer the questions of the Rosh and the Ran. But they can deal with that. But either way, my point really this evening is to explain that whilst we instinctively feel that there is a mitzvah to get married, it's actually not so straightforward. Okay.